All right, we are live. Welcome to the Artcasters. This is the show where we kind of talk about the ins and outs and of cartooning, illustration, graphic design, and comics. And today we have a really special guest, a friend of mine, who's a really good cartoonist, painter. I actually have one of his paintings in my house. I pulled that off the wall but rad paintings.
You have that. That's hilarious.
I do. We swapped. Yeah. So I'll be introducing our guest in a second, and the topic tonight's going to be pretty exciting too. I think Cory's going to have a lot to contribute to, because we are now joined by two teachers. So you guys also might notice that Scott Cirkland is missing and that Cory is here. And so Cory is kindly subbing in for Scott while Scott's kind of out on vacation. And then Rick is just being badass and being a guest on our show. So, okay, let's do our intros. So I am Joshua Kemble. You can find my work at joshuakemble.com. You can subscribe, hit the bell, all that fun stuff to get notifications when we're about to go live. And if you're bored, you can also pick up my graphic novel about faith and mental illness, 2 stories, book 1, that's out from Marcosia, and it's available on most online bookstores, although I'd recommend, if you want to save some money, buy it through Amazon, because it's like, for some reason, on a really discounted rate there, so it'll save you some cash and free shipping if you have like Prime. So but if you don't want to support Amazon, talk to your local indie friendly shop and see if they'll order it for you. Cory, where can everybody find your work?
You can find me at corykerr.com. And if you want to see my most recent stuff or whatever I'm working on at the time, corykerr.com/online. Got some recent YouTube stuff up, and I should be posting another animation here in a day or two on Instagram and YouTube. So.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And then our special guest today is Rick Reese. He was one of my teachers at Cal State Long Beach. Super awesome illustrator. We actually ended up becoming friends in grad school, because we ended up going to grad school around the same time and pulling late nights doing tons of work and questioning our own identity, because it's like, if anybody's worked on a graduate thesis, it's a nightmare, but it's fun and you learn a lot. So this is Rick Reese, and his link's down there. But Rick, where can everybody find your work? And then we'll kind of get into the topic and stuff.
Well, if my internet stays on long enough for me to say it, we'll see how it goes. But my website is rickreeseart.com, which I update every decade. And Josh, I always get the timeline with you so screwed up. I always forget that you were a grad student at the same time I was, and I just remember you going out onto the roof of FA4 and smoking, and then coming back through the window, to paint.
That's right.
So fun. But yeah, anyway, I guess I should say that I'm the chair of the illustration program at Cal State Long Beach. Oh, I think I just disappeared. Did I cut out?
No, you're good.
I hear you.
Yeah, we still got a
all right.
Woo. So Rick, being the chair of the illustration department, I think like you're the perfect person to talk.
Yeah, that's fancy sounding, but that doesn't mean anything.
No.
Sorry, I interrupted.
That's rad. That's rad.
I just have to say that all that means is that nobody else wants to do it.
It means you have a bunch of extra responsibilities. But it does. I think. I mean, you've been teaching illustration for like you
don't get compensated for.
It's got to be like 17 years or something like that now that you've been teaching illustration. Something close to that, right?
2004.
Yeah, because I think I
close to 20
years. Class. Yeah, I had your class when I think. Well, anyhow, I had your class, and I think it was like your second year or something. So it was a long time ago. But it's like I think that like illustration is such a challenging thing to teach, and graphic design as well. Illustration, commercial art in general it's just a hard thing to teach. And so I think it's a good topic, like just kind of in the sense of like, how do you approach teaching illustration? I guess before we get into that, we should probably, because, you know, when you are teaching illustration, you always kind of want to show that you've gotten your chops, like doing some art. So maybe we start there. Like, so maybe we start there. Like, how did you start out in illustration, and like, where did you kind of, what led you to teaching, I guess?
So I'm going to give you the abridged version because it's so convoluted, I feel. But I got both my degrees from Long Beach. Super incestuous, I realized. I also teach there, so I was like the guy that just wouldn't leave, kind of. And I think they were just like, we need to hire him because it's creepy that he just won't go away. You know, like this guy just keeps hanging out. I felt like, you know, that Bugs Bunny cartoon with the big bulldog Spike and his little friend that's like, hey, Spike, hey, Spike. I always felt like that little dog that just was annoying. But they finally hired me. So, but anyway, I got my first degree from Long Beach. And then I just kind of, this was, the internet was young and Photoshop was very young. And I just did this sort of cliche thing where you put your portfolio together and you walked around in LA and you dropped it off at places and tried to get work. And it took me a while, but my first job was at a place called Bongo Comics, which is a really small company. I believe it's now shuttered. And I worked on Futurama and The Simpsons comic books, which was really fun. It was a great job. And the people that worked there were some of the best people I've ever worked with, actually. I kind of missed that job after I quit, but the pay was brutal, so I had to leave.
Sounds like comics.
Yeah, like it was just, I mean, it was a great job. We played a lot of video games, but my wife got pregnant and I was like, oh my gosh, I need a real job. And so then I left there and I went to a toy company and designed toys for a few years. And then that kind of cured me of wanting to ever work for another person ever again, because I hated working there so much. And their name shall not be spoken aloud. So I hated that company. I hated working there, and it just reinforced to me that I was a freelancer. Like, I'm never going to be able to work in-house for someone because I hate it so much. So I quit, and I've been freelancing ever since, which is, like when you're fresh out of school, if you say you're freelancing, it's synonymous with unemployed, but I haven't been unemployed, I swear. I've been working.
It's the business major equivalent of saying you're an entrepreneur.
That's so true. I always had to clarify to people when I was like full-time freelance. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, you're dropping out. Go. I missed what Cory said.
Cory?
Oh, never. Go ahead, guys.
Okay.
Oh, that's all right. Go ahead. Bad job in the first place.
Okay, so I always had to explain to people when I was full-time freelance, like, you know, like, because I would say I'm freelance and they're like, oh, okay, so what does your wife do? And I'm like, no, I'm like the breadwinner of my like of our relationship. And they're like, sure, what does your wife do though? And I'm like, no, like I pay for our insurance. Like
you have a trust fund then, right? Your trust fund is pretty big.
Yeah, they're like, so you have rich parents. It's like, no, I just kind of make money doing art. And they're like, really? Like, I think it's fascinating to people, and I think it's hard for them to wrap their brains around, because like a lot of people would be like, well, what do you do if you get sick? And I'm like, go to the doctor. And they're like, well, what about insurance? And I'm like, I pay for insurance. They're like, you know, like it's this, all these things, you know, which, you know, there's all sorts of difficulties of freelance, but I do think that's like one of the most important things for people to understand. It's like anywhere you work, there's uncertainty, and like if you're freelance, there's uncertainty. Anywhere you work, health insurance costs money. You miss out on like maybe the collective bargaining to get like lower rates of insurance.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's still possible to be insured, to have like, it's possible to actually make a living as a freelancer. It's a hard life, but you can make it work, you know. Not for everyone.
I have 3 kids, and I'm steadily growing fatter.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the way to go.
But I mean, I have to say, I mean, you know, it's easy to say in a way, but I do teach, and I've been teaching. You asked how I got into it, and I never really answered. But I started teaching I don't really know. I before I got a master's degree, I started teaching kind of part-time, and then I realized I just liked it. You know, I met people like you and people that were excited about art, as opposed to those jaded, cranky old illustrators whose dreams were fading before my very eyes, you know.
Yeah.
So I started teaching more and more, and got kind of sucked into it, and I got a master's degree, and just, you know, tried my hand at painting, and have always been sort of painting and illustrating and just doing whatever I wanted. And then ultimately teaching just took over. And it's easy to say, oh yeah, I made a living freelancing, but I have to remember that, you know, a lot of my income was coming from teaching, which speaks to how much income I make, which is pretty bad, you know, but I've managed, and, you know, we live in Orange County and we do okay. It's just, it is hard. Like, people that go into freelancing, you got to hustle. And if you're not willing to hustle, it is rough.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think I think it's valuable though, because it's like I work in house now, and I don't think I could have handled working in house like 10 years ago. I think I would have like not appreciated a lot of the stuff that I like about working in house. Like, so it's like, but I do think it's an important experience for artists to have, to kind of figure out their identity, especially commercial artists. Like, I really do think I'm pretty convicted, like, most people should give it a shot, like doing full-time freelance. You'll level up, you'll learn some sales skills, because you have to learn sales. Like, you don't have a sales department for yourself.
Right.
You learn a lot of really important communication skills with your clients, which is like invaluable. Like, you can take that anywhere. And you also learn how to say no to crappy clients, which is really good. But it's,
I'm sorry, you guys, I got most of that, but you're cutting out pretty bad. So
that's okay. So then you end up kind of teaching, and what was it about teaching that kind of appealed to you? Was it, I mean, cause I can definitely see the appeal of like being around young artists who aren't jaded and are still have that fire. Was that kind of the biggest appeal, or what was your, like, what drew you to teaching the most?
Well, so I had a mentor named David Hadlock, who was the chair of the program when I went through it. He was there when you went too, right?
Yeah. Brilliant guy.
Yeah. Real smart feller. Anyway, he was a really smart guy, and I really liked the faculty there. Like, there's a woman named Robin Richardson, who's a colleague of mine now, who I just love to pieces. She's amazing.
Yeah.
Mark Michelin. There's so many people there that I am friends with and colleagues with. The relationship between the students and the faculty at Long Beach is really cool. And I've taught at a few other schools, and it's not even close to the same. But there's something about teaching. I think, you know, I'll just answer it in the most pragmatic way. I really like the idea that I'm helping people make a living doing what they like to do. That's truly all it really boils down to. We could get esoteric and start getting out into the philosophical weeds if we want to. But the fact of the matter is, if I get a student prepared to work and they get a job and they're an illustrator, you know, with a capital I or whatever, and they feel happy with their lot in life, then it makes me feel like when I helped you get your job at the company that shall not be named.
Yeah.
That used to be one of my bread and butter clients. And at some point, all of that just dried up. I wasn't getting any work from them. So I go down there, you know, trying to get work from the art director. And I went into the room where all the art people hung out, and it was all my students. You know, they were all taking my work. And it was like, you know, you're kind of swearing under your teeth, but it was one of the most gratifying experiences of my life. So
yeah,
my wallet took a shot, but my ego was boosted by seeing them all employed there.
Dude, I've totally experienced that. I didn't teach very long, and I think we taught at similar places that maybe weren't quite what you described Long Beach as being. And I did experience that though, where I actually had one kid, and I was so proud of this. They actually just dropped out and just started working at Nickelodeon. Because I saw their portfolio. They were in like a Photoshop 1 class, and they were awesome.
Right.
Like, they were beyond awesome. And I was like, dude, just go get work now. And he's like,
really?
Well, what about class and stuff like that? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, you can do your class stuff and level up, but like, you're good. Like,
no.
And I was stoked. Like that made me really happy. You learned like 2 or 3 things and then worked. So,
Right.
but
it does speak to Josh. I mean, if you don't mind me interrupting, there is this idea though that, you know, there's these 2 poles when you're teaching what we teach. Where there's industry, right, and then there's the humanities and education, and there's this strange balance between the 2 because and it's probably because there's too many punk rock songs going in my head or whatever. I have this real serious mistrust of industry, and I don't know how much I should allow it into my program. Well, it's not my program, into the program. And then at the same time, students want industry ties because they're there to get a job. And I'm pretending I'm not working at a trade school or whatever, you know? And so we're trying so hard to sort of find this, because I do want it to be this magical place where you can experiment and fail and don't have the pull of industry, because frankly, you're going to be working for industry for 40 something years. Like give me 4 years of magic aside from industry to prepare you for it, maybe, or to make art with a capital A, because later on they're just going to be like, can you draw a kid on a pony? And yeah, you can do that while you're watching TV. You know?
Yeah, dude, that's so well said. And it's a hard lesson learned, because I remember when I was in school, even early in graduate school, I had this attitude of just like, well, I just need to get paid to do work, and I'm going to get paid to do awesome work. And I just kept thinking that there would be this window where I'd get high paid work that I was happy with, you know? And so I kept working, and finally I got to the point where I was getting hired for my style. And still I was like, I hate this. You know, and I realized like, oh, I want to do, like, that's one thing that actually graduate school really helped unlock for me, was realizing like, I want to do art that like is really like totally unsellable. Like,
right. But I call it capital A art, you know, art.
Yeah. But just to make art like for art's sake. And I think a lot of cartoonists already kind of are in tune with that, because most cartoonists are making comics for comics sake, because like there isn't
no reward.
yeah, especially the indies, you know. But I think that is cool, and I would say that's one thing that's really unique and cool about Long Beach, is it doesn't just build your skills in trade. It builds a lot of your critical thinking skills and your philosophy skills. You start figuring out your own kind of identity as an artist, and you even start figuring out your own art theory, which is really a headache when you're taking it. But then like afterwards, it's like I've pulled from that so much. It's informed my politics. It's informed a lot of things that, you know, I hated at the time, but it's
I didn't teach your theory class though, right? I wasn't your theory teacher.
No.
Just to get that straight. I do teach it now.
I remember when you told me you were taking that class, and I was like, actually, that's pretty cool, because I thought you would do a pretty killer job with that. But also the funny thing is,
ultimately they split us off. Oh no, go ahead.
They split you off from the other.
Yeah, there's a different section, but I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just have a really bad lag. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's cool. That was just basically the gist was that, you know, you take these theory classes, you have to take a ton of fundamental classes outside of your focus as well. And I think that structure is really good, because you come out like knowing how to do life painting, life drawing, like you understand 2D design, you understand typography, which is like any illustrator leaving school with just drawing skills, like, you know, if we're talking about trade level stuff, is just in for a world of trouble, because they expect you to, like, Cory I want to hear Cory on this too, but it's like, you know, you have to, like, now you have to know animation, you have to know video editing, you have to know typography and graphic design and illustration. And, you know, like the old days of, like, you know, being like a comic artist that does the pencils and kind of passes them on, and there's the guy who does the inks or whatever. Like that's a very rare thing nowadays. Like it's you're more and more expected to kind of do everything. And
your typesetter jobs have started to dry up. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Like moving around the little letters one piece at a time, putting layers of lead in between the lines.
The pay stuff days. The pay stuff days are over. I don't think Rick and I are that old.
You're not cutting Rubylith anymore or doing any of that stuff.
My first art job was peeling Rubylith for a screen printer.
Wow.
That was my first grunt art job was like doing, yeah. But this is the thing you start learning as you get older. It's like there's things I learned from that when I started getting more known in t-shirt design were like super useful, because I'm like, I know how to do trapping. I know how to do color separation. Like, so I knew how to prep my files better than most artists, and that gave me an advantage. So like, yeah, even those grunt jobs, even the crappy jobs when you're working, you know, like I used to work at a graveyard shift or whatever. And it's like, I take skills from what I learned working a register, dealing with bad customers, and I use that all the time in my workplace, you know?
That's funny.
I put paper labels on burnable DVDs. That was my internship.
That's terrible. That sounds horrible.
Oh, it was the worst. Actually, I did that for about 2 weeks, and then my boss walked in, because this was my internship, and I was all excited that it was like this video production house, and I thought I would be doing work, you know. And I'm just cheaper than some robot that they could have bought. And so he walks in and he's like, "Hey, does anybody know how to animate DVD menus? So one of our clients wants it, but does anybody know?" And I was like, "I know how to do that." I had no idea how to do it at all, but I was like, "It's got to be better than putting stickers on discs."
Right.
And so I taught myself how to do that in an all-nighter, and the next day showed up to work and started animating DVD menus.
That's hilarious. That's great.
Dude, so once you you kind of like moved into teaching, and then it kind of became like more of a full-time thing, like, did you have a similar moment to like my first time stepping in front of a classroom? I felt like first off, I had no idea how adjuncts were prepared at the time. And I don't know if this was unique to the school I was teaching at, but they just kind of threw me in the class and were just like, "This is just the class you teach." And I was like, had to figure out kind of from the ground floor, like how to even do the thing. And I had to, like, I think I called you, Rick. I called like 5 other people. I was like, I don't really, like, I thought there would be some kind of prep or something for it. Like, what do you, and so I had to like kind of on my own, like ask a ton of other teachers that I knew just to help me out. Like, and it was like a week before class starts. And I remember that first day just feeling like, what am I doing here? Like, I have nothing to teach. And then, and then the first kid, when I'm like opening up like, I think cause it was like an intro to Photoshop class or something, like nothing really exciting at first. Usually when you're new as an adjunct, they'll give you like an intro course or something. And I was like, so I pull open Photoshop, and then a kid is just like, "Well, what's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's that's like the cursor on the screen." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I can teach you."
I got
you know what I mean?
Like, that's funny.
But I started noticing, you know, like that, oh, I have some, like, beyond just a cursor, like, they'd ask me questions, and I'd be like, oh, I guess that's, like, obvious to me because I've been doing this for a while, but, like, it's not obvious to them. You know, like, I don't know. It was interesting. It was but did that take you a while to kind of get used to, like, how to teach and, like, what your method was and stuff like that?
Yeah, I had a friend that was a teacher. His name was George Zebot, and he's retired at this point. But I remember going and talking to him when I first started. And he basically kind of took me aside and said, "You know, you'll be a good teacher in 10 years. And I was like, "Well, geez, you know, that's a long time." And he was right. It takes about that long. And I don't even know. I still don't know. I wouldn't call myself a good teacher. For the first 10 years, I kept thinking, you know, they'll fire me after this semester, you know, because I swore at somebody or I did something terrible. And they just kept hiring me back. So I don't know. And Tatiana, by the way, I saw your comment, and you're so rad. Thank you. It wasn't me that was making amazing work. You made amazing work. So, so yeah, I'll say that, you know, my first day teaching was probably one of the sweatiest days of my life. I'll just say that. You know, I was 20. How old was I when I started teaching? I was in my early 30s, late 20s. I can't remember exactly how old I was, and I don't want to do the math. And when I first went to class, there was a guy that I recognized as somebody that was in school when I was in school. So it had only been, 4 years since I went back and started teaching. So I was extremely self-conscious, but I think, and it was also against my personality, which I know, I think I'm a good actor and I can come across as bombastic and gregarious and all this stuff. But in reality, I was pretty introverted and didn't like getting the attention that teaching brought. I don't like people looking up to me, and I don't like influencing people in an inappropriate. I don't like the idea that they think I'm something that they can't be, or that I don't know how to say this correctly, but I think my goal as a teacher is to demystify the process of getting into this industry. Like, it's not that tricky. There isn't this secret room where we teach the really good people how to get jobs and you're not invited. That doesn't happen. I was a B+ like everybody else. And I just kind of worked hard to get work and learn the ropes, and was as prepared or unprepared as any other student. I wasn't an A-lister. I'm not famous. I make a living doing the grind like everyone else does. And I want my students to at least be prepared to go make work. And there's logic to the way classes are run. And I probably was guilty of over intellectualizing some of my classes. And in some cases, like, since I've been struggling with this neurological stuff from COVID, I probably under intellectualize everything now because I'm sort of brain dead, but I'm assuming that when my brain comes back at some point in the future, I'll probably start over intellectualizing, illustration 1 again. And I probably shouldn't. I think school was comfortable for me because when I left, I wanted to talk about composition, and I wanted to talk about art theory and things that illustrators just didn't care about in the workplace. And I felt lonely there, frankly, and sort of not rewarded for being a nerd. And then when I went to school, I got rewarded for being a nerd. And so I just wanted to stay at school. That sounds really pretentious and gross, but I don't mean it to. I knew where my home was, and I still work, but I freelance, so I can pick and choose a little bit more. And yeah, it's just, I ramble, but my clients, I'm a little bit picky about who I work for at this point, because I don't want to relive those. I don't like those toxic relationships with clients that I disliked back when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I rambled. I don't even know what we're talking about. This is my COVIDian brain is.
No.
Go ahead.
It actually makes perfect sense. I relate to that so much because I chased getting like sexy clients and like making like my goal was like to get like some big name clients. Like I had specific ones on my list, like Scholastic was one of them. Like, there's a couple that I just was like, if I get there, then I'll be like, at the point where I'm like enjoying this thing.
Right.
And I pursued that for so long and dealt with like the feast and famine and the constant sort of like, there are times when you're freelance where you can turn down like work you don't want to do. And then there's times when you're full-time freelance where it's like, you literally take whatever you get because you need to eat. And so like, there was a point where I just got sick of the chase and wanted to have like a window where I could work on my own stuff, because the whole appeal of freelance to me at first was like, well, that'll be great because I can do like client work and then I can turn and work on my own stuff. And like, that'll be awesome. Yeah. There will be so much time. And I found just from doing it, like that just never happens. Like you usually, especially for people like I'm a workaholic. So it's like for me to like shut off and like stop the hunt for clients, even when I was full. I just remember the years where like where it was hard to get clients. So I'd be like, no, I can make that happen. And, and I found that like my personal work was just going nowhere. And so that is one of the reasons I kind of took the art direction gig, because it's something I can clock out of and like work on my stuff. And I had like, even though it's a small window, it's a window where I can build a habit and actually get work done. Like that's the capital A art stuff. But I do understand what you're talking about intellectualizing too, where it's like, and I don't think it's like a heady or snobby thing.
Look, what's Cory doing?
I'm sorry. I'm doing this animation.
Sorry.
I know. I tried to put it up on the screen to have it not be distracting. But I'm doing this animation. And
sorry, dude. No, you're totally fine. It's just you're very.
That did look a little creepy.
No, I know. Part of the animation is I have to film my eye doing weird stuff because I'm putting like a threshold adjustment on it and then putting it inside of this machine.
You should should pull up the animation. Can you pull it up, Cory?
Just what you were working on. Show it up on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so you don't think I'm insane, I'll show you the proof of concept here. You guys keep talking. It'll take me a second to pull it up.
I will tell you, like, so Rick and I were in grad school together, so we're pretty familiar with like, you know, somebody just stopping by and being like, hey, can you take this picture real quick? And they just make a weird pose, and you're like, okay, cool, all right. That's pretty normal.
When I was doing my master's, I would do that to my neighbors who were not artists, right? I lived in like this like, I don't know, it was just a bunch of duplexes next, and like we had like a shared lawn or whatever. And everybody else is like getting degrees in like economics and, you know, mechanical engineering and whatever. And I'm like, hey, can you pretend like you're being attacked by a giant snake for a minute for me? Yeah, sure. Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Totally. Yeah. You know, like when I don't know if you've ever worked in toys, Cory, but like a couple of illustrators I used to work with, they would just jump up and be like, and then they'd look at their arm, right? And they'd sit down and draw it. You know?
You ever feel yourself as you're doing it, where you're like drawing?
Yeah, like, where's the muscle tension?
Yeah, I got it. Okay, I got
it. I still do that with the intro students. I'm like, you know, they'll draw someone and their pelvis will be like detached from their spine, and I'm like, you know, I need you to stand up and just assume that pose. You did that once in my class, Josh, to that one girl, and she was like, "Don't touch me." Do you remember that?
Oh, I do remember that. That's when I was TAing. I forgot about that. I also TA'd for Rick, and that was my first experience kind of teaching. And
oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So that's my proof of concept. So that's why I'm making really weird faces with my phone 2 inches from my eye.
There's a method to the madness.
or there's just madness and
there's madness to madness. That's cool.
I love it. Dude, I think one of the cool things though about illustration, and this is the thing that like you're totally dead on about with like school, is like kids should absorb that while they're in it, because it's like it is a really weird bubble where you can be creative and you can fail, and not only that, you can try, and actually by failing you have freedom to actually like push further into areas you may not even try before.
If you never fail, I'm sorry, go ahead, Josh. I've got a lag, and so I think you're paused, but it's actually just lag, and then I'm jumping in on top of you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Okay, so it you know, like those failures like allow like opportunity for growth, and also they teach you really important things about like when you are working commercially. Like for me, like I aspire to do graphic novels, and it's like because of the experience at Cal State Long Beach, had programmed myself to know how to work on something that could potentially fail and see it through to the finish without necessarily a dollar sign at the end. And that's really helpful, because on top of your freelance stuff, that's the bill paying stuff. A lot of the early work a lot of illustrators get is not like the most exciting work. So on top of that work, you have to be making the exciting work. And like, in order to have that.
Beyond that, Josh, I mean,
yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was done. You
did it
read
again.
That one right. You read that one right.
I feel like the interrupting. Yeah, I feel like the interrupting cow. I'm like, nah. But it beyond just kind of the industry education relationship, but there's it gives people space to come up with their own, and we say visual voice, you know, but come up with their own visual voice, for lack of a better term, so that they know what they want to do and what they make. And it sort of steers them to particular niches within the industry and helps them sort of become a unique artist that allows them space in the industry. You know what I mean? If you just work to industry all the time, you're going to be you're going to chase this thing forever. And it's never going to be your work. It's going to be what industry wants. It also goes to the kind of the idea of what educators and what institutions are for and what their philosophy is. And I really don't think that my job is only to prepare people to work. It is part of the job. There's no question that students want work, and I totally understand it. But the only way, in my opinion, that you're going to learn. So we're gonna quote Voltaire for a second. The antithesis of learning is certainty, right? And I hate to be that guy, but I love that quote. If you know something already, then you are unteachable, right? It's the people that don't know that I'm interested in, the ones that are uncertain, and the ones that are continually looking for something. So I love that about art, is that you're never finished. You never arrive at a goal. It's always, the carrot is always just beyond reach, it seems. So you're trying, you want to teach people, and you want the body of knowledge to move forward, and you want people to be able to experiment safely and grow in that way. And I don't know about your experience, but my experience with the industry has never been that. They never allow experimentation and growth. They hire you because they want something very specific that fulfills a very specific communication need. And if you experiment and fail, you get fired.
Yep.
No,
that's totally true. So one of the things.
So I say this all the time, but businesses are inherently risk adverse because businesses are built out of people that are trying to protect their job. So even businesses that pretends to be, very forward thinking and disruptive and whatever, they're made up of people that are like, well, I'm the guy that is making this call. And if I make the wrong call by hiring the wrong person, right, then my butt's on the line. And so because there's people involved and those people's livelihoods are involved, the decision making is exceptionally risk adverse. And so they don't hire for innovation when it comes to art. They hire for self-plagiarization. Like, I saw you do this thing, I want you to do that again and put my brand on it.
Yeah. I
I
think that touches on something really important, because the one exception in the industry that I think Cal State Long Beach, at least my experience with it, helped with this, is they do help you find your own voice. So when you do hit industry, like I was able to, for a long time, like kind of build a whole t-shirt career off of people coming to me for my thing. Like it wasn't me going to an art director and the art director being like, oh, like do it in this style. They'd go, no. Like, you see this piece you did, can you do it like that? And it's like, yeah, I like drawing that. That's fun. Like, that's my thing. That's the only way you get there, though. At least, well, I shouldn't say the only, because that sounds kind of like
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I think Rick might have cut out.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm lagging. I'm sorry.
No worries. But the only way that you get to the point where industry is like not going to be sort of making you fit in the box to fill like whatever client need they have is if you make work that's outside of the box, outside of industry, and then industry kind of catches on. Like that's sort of the way it works. Like, so at least from what I've experienced, like where it's like, I never had art directors hire me to do something cool until I did something cool that was for no money. And then they saw it and were like, oh, do that, 'cause that's really cool. I don't know if it makes sense, but
that's totally true. No, it totally makes sense. The same thing happened to me. And I'm sure, Cory, it's happened to you too. I didn't get hired to do posters for cool bands until I did free posters for all the local punk bands. You know what I mean? Can you hear me? I can't tell. I'm so laggy.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you. It's cool too.
Dan
so yeah, it was one of those things where,
oh, sorry. I was just gonna say Dan Styles agrees with what you're saying.
So frustrating.
And that's what he did, is he was like, he just plays with stuff. And then people come to him and they're like, hey, that thing you did was awesome. Like, we want you to do a thing like that for us. And so anyway, so same kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing to do that when you're starving to death and you're fresh out of school. I get it. I mean, I worked in-house for companies for a while, and it took a long time to kind of overcome the reticence to I hear you bragging that you're doing posters for punk bands. That's not a brag, man. They don't pay. Yeah, even the big bands don't pay. I mean, that depends on the merch company you're working for. You know, I don't know. Do you still do gig posters, Josh, or not so much anymore?
I did gig posters for a while, and then I just kind of fell out of it. Like, I think that was about the point where I decided to go back to grad school, and we ended up being like classmates at that point. Because I was like, I had gone to grad school, and I was kind of cocky at the time. I was definitely not prepped for grad school because I was like, I'm gonna get in here and be the best and like get a bunch of work, and like that's not really the right. It's not really the right attitude. So I think like, about a year in, I was just like, okay, I need to like go work. And then after working for a while and even doing gig posters, that was one of those scenarios where I'm like, oh, I'm starting to get paid for a couple of these things. I'm selling editions. This is totally not as fun as I thought it would be. And that's when I went back to grad school. Was like, I realized that there was some hole that I wasn't filling with freelance, and thus Two Stories was born, which is like, that's when I basically decided to just scrap most of my objectives and just try to make like these weird autobio comics that are commercially unviable, like, but it's like,
isn't that so weird though, Josh, how like all the commercially unviable projects are the ones that keep you making art, right? Like the ones, it's not the paycheck. Like when I used to do work for bigger clients, it was just money, and it felt like lowercase a art to me. It just never was. But that's probably my own ego speaking too. I know I realize that, I always want to be taken seriously as an artist, and in reality, it's just absurd. I should just be happy with what I'm doing, and I am for the most part. I sometimes I just want to be like, I'm an artist, damn it, and scream at the neighbor's kid for no reason. Instead of just, can you just draw the kid on the pony? I'm so sick of people, giving me that much specificity in their assignments. It's like, no, I don't do that, man. Have you looked at my work? No, maybe you should before you call, because I don't draw kids on ponies. I did that for a toy company for a couple of years, and I almost killed myself.
So the funny thing is, like, I did that for a few years too, and I had a similar reaction where I was just like, I want to draw really like pulpy B movie posters and like monsters and stuff. I don't want to draw this. So then, weirdly enough, 10 years after that, I'm like, I'm tired of drawing B movie monsters. I just, and so I've kind of done I've kind of done a 180 in the sense of like, on the money part, I don't really care what it is I'm doing. I'll do a good job and make it look visually good. But when it comes to my own personal work, it's like uncompromising. Whereas before I was trying to find like this middle ground where you could compromise and make good work. And I don't know if that's possible, but I'd imagine that's got to be really hard to, if you're a kid and you're in school and you're like, all you want is just to get paid to do this thing. It is hard to kind of do that type of teaching that lasts. I'm glad you mentioned David Hadlock, because he did that. Like, I feel like there were lessons I learned in his classes that 5 years later, when I was working in the field, was like, that's what he meant. Like, and I think,
you're in your studio painting, and then suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, I remember this.
Yeah. So I think that's the kind of, but it's so hard to do that kind of teaching where you're like doing like teaching for both, where you're like trying to develop the artist and also the commercial artist. And I mean, that is that's a fine line. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know, yes, it is. And I have no idea how you judge what degree of success you do that. Teaching it's such a head game, because you are, I think if you're introspective to any degree, you're constantly going to doubt whether or not the influence you're having is beneficial, right? So I immediately don't want to influence people because, I'm just some stupid punk kid that skateboarded too long and messed up his back. Like, nobody should listen to me ever, Am I still around? I can't tell. You guys are all frozen.
You are. Are we freezing
okay.
on your end?
So I always feel like, you're freezing. So I feel like nobody can hear me. So I'm just talking to a wall, but I really do feel like and that may just be like insecurity or whatever you want to call it, but I still kind of trip out a little bit about the fact that I'm in front of graduate students talking about art theory or whatever, the same class that when I took it, I told the teacher that it was bullshit, and so here I am perpetuating that stuff. But I believe it now. Like my one friend told me that I drank the Kool-Aid. He's like, oh no, you teach art theory, yuck, you're one of them. And I was like, well, without it, you're making art in blind and ignorant, and your art suffers as a result of not knowing the contemporary framework within which it fits, right? So if you're satisfied with that, that's great. I mean, this is coming from a guy that does skateboard decks and rock posters, right? Like I didn't go to Yale, So I feel you got to take everything that I say with a grain of salt in a way, because there's this lofty goal, but really I'm just some dumb kid that grew up out in the sticks in Northern California and thought skateboarding and punk rock was what life was about. So
it's funny because as an adult, I feel like skateboarding and punk rock is kind of what life is about still. I mean, come on.
I don't know, man. Well, okay, I'll give this to skateboarding and punk rock. There was the nihilists and the people, the real nihilistic side of punk rock, but it never appealed to me. The thing that appealed to me about punk rock was, the world's messed up, but at least we're working on it. Like, we're trying, right? Instead of the rock and roll, like, well, I just want to party and be drunk in a gutter. That stuff never appealed to me. I have to answer this question, Josh. What are my thoughts on students drawing anime? I can't tell if that's a serious question or not.
I wish we had special effects. I wish we had special effects here, because Rick literally has posters in his room. Some of them drawn by him and some of them drawn by students, at least he used to, where it would be like him shooting lasers out of his eyes, melting an anime character. And they're like, why do you hate anime? Well, they're melting.
Well, no, their tears would fly out, because in anime, I think your tears fly out horizontally, like two tears fly out horizontally from your head. Isn't that how it works in anime?
Yeah.
Or you get that weird vein on your foot. Oh, they go up. Yeah,
they stole the
just
sweat
dodging
bullets. They stole the sweat bullets and like had them kind of point down instead of to the side. But
miraculously dodging my like Sonic the Hedgehog geometric haircut that doesn't really make sense as it rotates. So I have opinions about anime. However, I need to caveat opinions. I think they're justified to a certain degree, and I'm actually going to answer it seriously for Mr. Salazar, because he seems like a stand-up dude.
He is.
I actually am both horrified and amazed by anime. I think it's like a cultural phenomenon. Obviously, it gets a lot of people interested in art, kind of like Bugs Bunny did for me, And I'm sure that there were people that thought Bugs Bunny was the worst, and Popeye. I mean, they were violent and everyone was afraid of them. But anime is a great gateway drug to art, but it is a terrible thing to become addicted to. And when people can't break the habits that they form drawing anime, it drives me bonkers. And frankly, it's a crutch. And I don't understand how, and I say this all the time to my students, but in the grand scheme of things, the chances of your mom and your dad meeting on a cosmic scale are infinitesimally small. The chances that they would make you and that your genes and cells would split in a million different ways and you are able to make art is infinitesimally small. And yet here you are on this tiny marble, you're able to make art, all of those things worked in your favor, and then you dedicate your life to drawing in someone else's shitty style.
Yeah.
What the hell are you thinking?
Dude, I 100% agree. All it took me was like teaching like 1 or 2 classes in art school. And like, here's the thing, like, I don't think anybody who's teaching art, like especially illustration, like doesn't like Miyazaki. Like I think we like good manga or anime. It's just the template, like the bad, like how to draw manga template.
It's the crutch,
yeah, and really like being a seasoned artist who's like studied anatomy and like kind of broken out of my own bad habits, some of which I still have, but I'm always trying to break them. Once you do that, it's like you can see an artist putting themselves in a trap where they're not going to evolve or grow. And the worst part is when you try to kind of grow them and they go, oh, that's my style, it's anime. And you're like, well, then why are you in art school, dude? Like, you have your style worked out, you know who you are, you draw perfectly. Okay. Yeah. So it's hard. That's the hard part. That's one of the frustrating
the thing
parts
about it is, though, no, that's my really. I mean, we can wax philosophical, and I didn't realize that Cynthia was in here. Hi, Cynthia. But the thing about I can't see who's logged in here, so I don't know if I know anybody on here. And then shockingly, Cynthia shows up. I think the interesting thing about anime is that it teaches people how to draw, and it's.
Oh no, we lost you, Rick.
Oh, I disappeared.
Okay,
sorry. Am I?
Oh, robot again. Oh no.
Back? Where did I leave off?
You were about to kind of expound upon.
Where did I cut off?
You said the thing about, and then it went blah.
Okay. All right. The thing about anime is that it lifts people up to a certain level, artists, and then it stifles them beyond anything beyond anime. You can only go so far because it's a prescribed style. And it's easy to level these accusations against it, but at the same time, someone could go look at my portfolio and be like, "What are you talking about? You rip off Pusshead," you know. So there's you know, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. I think anime is like I think it's a problem because when somebody shows me their portfolio and they want to get into the BFA program and it's all anime, I have literally no idea if it's a creative person or not, because I can't tell what's theirs and what's fan art and what's somebody else's. And do you really want to draw like 10 million other fanboys out there? There's no reason to hire you.
My favorite way was the way that Robin put it. Like, I remember her saying, I loved Snoopy growing up, right? And if I went to art school and all I drew for every assignment was Snoopy in Charles Schultz's style, like anybody in their right mind would think I was insane. I mean, it's a beautiful style.
I kept drawing The Simpsons after I worked there.
Yeah. Oh man, those style guides. I remember doing the test and like, you know, they saw my comics. They were happy about it because they're like, oh, most people just show us Simpson stuff. This shows you can turn people around and like draw in environments. So here, yeah, take the test. And then I looked at the test and I was like, this is algebra. Like, this isn't drawing, it's algebra. It's like the science behind the, like, honestly, I have mad respect for anybody who can draw those, because it's like literally like if the eye is turned this way, there need to be 3 irises. Like if it's turned this way, there need to be 2. I wouldn't be able to do that.
I used to trip out about that, Josh. I mean, the people that used to work on Futurama, the pupils had to be a correct size. I could never do that. I have to say too, though, that, and I'm still on this question because there's something about it that gets under my skin. But the other day, I watched all of the Pacific Rim animes on Netflix with my son, and they were badass. So, you know, and I also finally, for the first time, watched what's that one with the motorcycle? I can't remember the name. Akira. That was cool. Akira. And never watched that. And then I turned my son on to Cowboy Bebop because it's just rad. And it's just good storytelling, you know. So I say, you know, anime is bad, and then there's like, it's amazing. So, you know, it's so subjective.
Yeah, I think it's just
there's also, there's actual anime, and then there's what crappy artists who haven't done enough research think anime is. Like, anime isn't a genre in Japan. It's like, it literally just means animation. It's like calling comic books a genre, you know. But like, by the time it gets distilled and popularized, you know, it's either Hello Kitty or Dragon Ball Z, and those are like your 2 options once you get to like, whatever. And so if you're drawing in one of those two styles,
I mean,
like Tokidoki or whatever, you think you're drawing anime, but really, like it runs the full gamut.
Yep.
Totally.
I
wonder if. Oh, I was just gonna say, if you think about what I do for a living, which is trying to teach people to be illustrators, it's actually it's antithetical to what I do to just say, yes, work in this prescribed style. You're not learning anything if you do that. If you've met with a certain amount of success by mimicking somebody else, and then you're not willing to take the next step, that's great. You can play chopsticks on the piano for the rest of your life, and you could be the best chopsticks player ever. But don't you eventually want to play Beethoven or something? Like, do you want? I'm not. It just seems like it stunts people's creative progress, and that's why I don't like it.
Yeah, I think
and I'm beating a dead horse.
and I also I want to reiterate to people too, like before the whole anime thing, like I remember in art school, occasionally there would be, like when I was going, like the anime thing wasn't as huge for style, but there was always like one or two guys in my class, even though I was a huge comic book fan, but they would want to draw like the Marvel way, like on everything. And so they draw like every character they drew would be like 7 heads tall, and they'd have the same chin and the same template. And it was the same problem, like where it's like that's cool to like kind of borrow later. Like if you want to do that later, great. But like when you're going to a school to kind of like have a voice, and one of the great things about Cal State Long Beach, at least to me, that I think is cool is like I came out of that school and I was not the best artist, but I had a style that was way more distinctive than most of the artists that I saw coming out around the same time from different art schools, where you could like go, oh, that guy, like that's Cal Arts, like 2009. Yeah. Like that's this school, and you know exactly where they come from. But like I would end up in the same design annuals or student annuals as they would from a
making the same
school,
amount
from a state school with possibly less technical skill, but I had more creative skill, more composition skill, and I had a better identity as an artist. And
well, like, dude, we say that all the time. We may not be as polished, but we make unique weirdos.
Yeah.
But I think there's something about, I mean, we could talk about, instead of anime, you could talk about abstraction in general, and maybe even just take it to somebody like Picasso. People will see, somebody that's maybe less educated in the arts would look at an abstraction by somebody like, I mean, I'm just using Picasso because everybody knows his name, but you could look at an abstract painting and you'll hear people say, oh, my kid could do that or whatever. But in reality, when Picasso was a kid, he could completely render whole coronation scenes with oil paint. Even those painters alive still can't do. He was a prodigy, and by sort of mastering those fundamentals, he was then able to move beyond them and start expanding the body of knowledge. If he had just skipped those things, I don't feel like there's as much impact to his art. I really don't feel like his abstraction would make as much sense or have as much intellectual heft, for lack of a better word. I have a problem with people skipping the fundamentals and saying, well, that's my style. Well, your style is just poor drawing, and a lack of training, frankly.
Yeah. And that's where.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody was saying.
Well, I was gonna agree with you and say that's where a lot of people miss what's going on, is they take simplicity or something like that as easier, when in fact, when it's done well, you actually come at it from a place on the other side of complexity. It's like if I go in and I can like draw from reference and then draw from construction and then get to the point where I can construct from whatever, and I begin to innovate and whatever. At some point in time, I'm taking reality and I'm choosing what to do, what to add, what to eliminate, what to exaggerate, what to simplify, and that's what actually makes it interesting, rather than like exactly what you were saying with anime is like, here's the prescribed way to draw anime eyes. here's the prescribed formula for an anime face. Originally, those were all based off of very good artists making some interesting decisions, and then they became codified and it became formulaic. But mimicking the existing simplified distilled formula, that's not where the money or the creativity is.
Yeah, and I also
it's just.
Oh, sorry. I just know
ahead,
Jake. I actually know Jake in the chats, and I think the style that you work in may not be the kind that Rick is particularly referencing. I think he's more referencing like the Sailor Moon sort of template.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I thought anime to me is Sailor Moon.
Exactly, but it's like, so Jake and I talked about Yoshiro Tatsumi's A Drifting Life, and it's like he's like this indie cartoonist in manga, and his drawings are really refreshing. All the characters have a different shape and form, and like it's got like way more nuance to the cartooning. And like I think that would be something I could pass to Rick, and he'd be like, "This is badass." He's just talking about the generic template where like all the characters look the same. Yeah. I mean,
the horror comic guy with the spiral eyes, whatever, the Junji Ito, that guy's amazing. So we're speaking in generalizations, but you have to kind of keep in mind that I realize that we're speaking in generalizations. It's never a good conversation to have, but it's sort of like asking somebody, so like, what do is cobalt blue a warm or is it a cool blue? Well, who cares? But we can fight about it infinitely.
Yeah. Well, and also it's also one of those scenarios of like, there's also some music that's just not for other people. Like if somebody asks me like, what do you think about easy listening? I'm gonna have some words for them, and that doesn't mean anything necessarily. It just means it's soulless and generic.
Yeah, but I gotta say, Josh, like some of my students that I have, I'll just say this: the vast majority of the students that come to school that have this prescribed anime style to their work struggle. That is not always the case, because there are people like Jenny Yu that have this just amazing success, and they draw beautifully. They don't use it as a crutch. They purposefully make the decision to work in that style. It's not because they can't do anything else. It's because they want to work in that style. And I don't know Jake's work, but I'm assuming Jake wants to work in that style. That's different than not being able to work outside of it because you're incapable. Those are it comes down to intentionality, and intentionality is huge in everything that I believe in, if down to the mark you make and who made your paint, and what canvas you use and who made that, and is it imported or not. Like all of that stuff actually matters to me, because I seriously believe that every move you make as an artist is a political statement, and I don't believe that you should just callously go through life and make whatever the hell you want without giving it any thought. I just don't work that way. That's subjective, but that's how I am. And so it influences the way I think about all of those things.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Awesome. It's well put though, because I think like the thing about like illustration, and one of the reasons I love illustration and comics in particular, like why I'm so fond of comics, is like you're a storyteller, and so like every move you make can either advance or like say nothing, or it can say like quite a lot more than like a story in words. And so it's like every choice you're making should be fairly deliberate, because you can. And it's so cool.
Well, I mean,
it's just such a good form of communication.
It is. Well, if you think about the lasting power of images, like for example, when you were a kid, you probably read Lord of the Rings like we all did, right? You read The Hobbit and the three other. I had this picture of what Gandalf looked like in my head. I didn't read the illustrated versions. The covers were just, the towers or whatever. And then the movie comes out, and now Gandalf is always that actor, whatever his face. I can't remember his name, right? But it supplants, or it always, the image has, in my opinion, and always will have far more power than the written word. And it's a cliche, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words. But there are authors like Mark Twain, plenty of people, and I'm blanking because I have a COVID-idiot brain right now. but they wouldn't allow their books to be illustrated because the illustrations were more powerful than the written word in terms of its ability to evoke imagery in the mind, right? So the word may get you certain part, but images are dangerous. I mean, religions have banned them. In Islam, you can't represent things on earth. You're not supposed to do those things. So they would do calligraphy that was beautiful and spoke to beauty in a way that images weren't allowed, that they couldn't do with imagery. I'm tripping over my tongue and I apologize, but it's an interesting and vexed and lovely relationship between text and image, and we get to work in an industry that sort of both ties them together and renders them asunder. And I just think there isn't a more interesting discipline in my mind than illustration. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's also like a Pandora's box where like the second you start kind of thinking you have it figured out, there's a new issue. I think to me, I love comics because the second you kind of get a little more proficient with drawing, and then you have like figures, then you have to deal with backgrounds, and then you're like,
right,
and the same backgrounds from multiple angles, and then once you get that, you have to start thinking, should I always be showing literal figures and backgrounds? Can I be more metaphorical with what I'm showing? And then like you get through all of the visual challenges, and then you're like, what can I do with paneling? Oh, are there things I can do with paneling to mess with the timing? And like, oh, what can I do with typography? And then like you start playing more and more, and you understand why, like illustration and comics were the origin of the word story is from those.
Right.
So, which I love that Spiegelman. I used that in my thesis, Rick, like for grad school. I quoted Spiegelman's, because Spiegelman did an essay on it where he was saying he studied the origin of the word story, and it came from illustrations on different levels of a building. So that's literally why people call it stories on buildings. It's comics.
That's cool.
Which is cool.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course Spiegelman's going to find some way to make comics even cooler.
Mm-hmm.
But the word itself is illustrate, it means to bring to light or whatever. And I am totally smitten by what I teach. I wish that my brain was a little bit sharper so that we could talk, maybe a little bit more in depth about semiotics and signifiers and the signified, because it gets to the point where even the thing you're drawing, depending on who the viewer is and the lens they're looking through, can mean millions of different things. And it's a fascinating thing to study. I love it. I'm still obsessed by it, and I think that's why I'm still teaching. I never get tired of it.
I actually miss that's one thing where I can understand like really enjoying the academic setting too, because I do miss having those discussions. And ironically, like Jake and I just 2 days ago were talking about the male gaze, and like I was kind of trying to remember some of the theory I had read about it and stuff like that. And
I'm sorry, did you say the gaze?
The male gaze, not.
Oh,
not,
yeah. Gaze. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so we were just talking about that on a stream, and it's like it's nice to exercise the theoretical because it informs the work. And I think even if it's subconsciously back there, it starts informing decisions you make. And I still like totally will, just for the hell of it, because of those theory courses, I'll every once in a while just pick up a book on, like basic ethics or something. And I'll listen to that while I'm working, because like theories of ethics and language, like can totally inform your work. And like, I think
that's what we steal from, because we don't have our own language. We steal from philosophy and literature, and
we're usually
that's
about
where we get
we're usually about 100 years behind where they are philosophically.
Yeah, I'm not as pessimistic as you. I'll give us like 30 years.
Okay. I just remember when I read Baudrillard, and I was like, this is just the caves on, like the shadows on the cave walls thing from like.
Right. Are you talking about like, simulacra and simulation?
Yeah, I always felt like it was just his whole, to me, his shtick was, and don't get me wrong, there's some stuff that I actually in retrospect kind of dig about that theory. But it always came off to me as someone who was sort of going, the digital cave and the digital shadows might be cast. Like, what if reality is just a projection? Like
digital, no mention of Plato in that book, I imagine. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know about you, but I picked up what's his face, the South African animator artist. I always forget his name. And I was reading his book on drawing. I was all excited to get this book, and then of course the first chapter, what does he talk about? Plato's cave. And I just thought, I seriously can't read another artist talk about Plato. I can't. I need more Socrates and less Plato in my life. So it was a pain to read, but it was good. So, but there was something you said that I wanted to like talk about, and I can't remember what it was. It must have been a lie. Oh well.
Ethics thing.
I don't remember. I think the ethics of it, the ethical part of just like illustration in general, all of the ethical questions that I ever had when it came to working always boiled down to like minor threat. Like what would they think if it always boiled down to punk ethics. Do it yourself if no one's going to help you, and make it memorable and like bring your A game if you're going to do it, and then don't do other people harm, which is what I try to do with teaching. But of course, if you're Jake and you're a young student, you want to draw anime, I probably harm you, which I feel bad about. And just I don't remember what the subject here was, but the ethics thing's tricky because it ultimately I don't want to believe in situational ethics, right? I want to have this binary ones and zeros, black and white way of looking at the world, which I used to do when I was younger. Everything was very cut and dry, and I could sort of make decisions without having to wade through the gray area. But the older I get and the more situations get more complex, I start to really worry about the damage that I could be doing with my influence on students. And maybe I do marginalize students that shouldn't be. I have to say, one thing that I think is interesting, and I've noticed it in the comments here, that at Long Beach anyway, when we were in school, and maybe not with you, Josh, but when I was in school, and I realize this is a complete like veer off the subject, but when I was in school, most of the students there were white guys, right? Like just white dudes. Everybody that studied illustration was a white dude. And when I left, everyone was a white dude. All the art directors were older white dudes, and the illustrators were white dudes. Now, when you go to Long Beach State, there's probably 2 men out of 24 students, and they're all women of color, and they're all underrepresented minorities, and it's rad. Mm-hmm. It's so rad. It's so long overdue. And I mean, I'm a white guy, and I'm not ashamed of that at all, but I can't wait.
Oh, you froze.
To see what about. Am I there again?
Yes, I back? You are.
I was just going to say, I can't wait to see what those, like, especially women of color, I can't wait to see what happens when they're in positions of power and they're the art directors, to see what the visual landscape does. It's going to change, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be badass. It has to be. We're overdue.
100%. Yeah, I think there was a
like
little
it's almost
more
cliche to say. Oh, go ahead.
There was a little more diversity in the class I was in, but it still was predominantly men. I mean, it was diverse.
Yeah,
there were a few
male-dominated industry,
but it was totally primarily men, which is bizarre because, like my wife and I met in art school, right? And it's like she outdraws me. She's a better artist than I am. I've known that since I met her, And it's like I've met so many talented female illustrators that it's just like such a shame to like not have that be properly represented. And so I think that is really encouraging and exciting.
I don't think it ever happened.
Honestly, I kind of look forward to a world where I'm a minority. I kind of want a world where I become a minority. Not for like some kind of status, but just for like, I kind of think like maybe that'll solve some of the issues. Like out there, because I kind of feel like there's a lot of nuance,
Well,
but
dude,
I
I mean,
kind of
look at
think that needs to happen.
Well, I guess I can't speak to that, but I can only say that I have seen more women of color. I guess I hope that's the appropriate term. I'm not really sure. Underrepresented minorities, whatever you want to call them, go through school and their art is badass, and they make work that I could never make, and they tell stories that aren't mine, and they have a style and a look to their work that's informed by their experience that everybody needs to see and hasn't been seen yet. And it's cliche, but if you don't think the future is female, you're crazy, because 90% of the students that are going through Long Beach are women. And they're going to be the art directors in 20 years, and they're going to change the visual landscape, and it's going to be it's like I said, it's going to be badass, and I hope I'm alive, but I probably won't be. I'll probably be dead in the gutter somewhere.
Yeah, I love that though.
I hope that happens. I do too, because I've noticed it in the time I've been teaching, that the classes have gone from predominantly male to literally like 90% women.
That's so exciting. I mean, that's just cool,
isn't it?
Yeah,
it's going to just be a seismic shift in the way art looks. I mean, if they've been basically neglected when it comes. I mean, even the Guerrilla Girls were complaining about it back in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard to ignore now. And when the population, the educated population, is primarily made up of women, there's going to be a seismic aesthetic change in the culture, I hope.
Mm-hmm. And I also think, like, tacking onto what we were talking about kind of the primary function of illustration and comics, like, as far as I view it, is like, you're communicating stories. And to me, it's like the most boring. I did a video on my own YouTube page where I kind of went off about how stupid Comicsgate is. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a very like contentious movement, and I personally just like wanted
video games, right? Gamergate or whatever.
It's similar like that, but unfortunately, it's encroaching on comics. And I was just like, look, like indie comics just don't do this crap in indie comics. Like, just don't bring that nonsense to indie comics.
Right.
But my primary problem is, like, why would anyone want the same like boring, homogenous story that's just, the same exact thing recycled? It doesn't have anything new. It doesn't have any diverse viewpoints or like flat characters.
If you want that, all you have to do is read a Marvel comic. They've been doing that since the 40s.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the thing, is like, I want to see new stories, and I want to see other people's stories. And like, I also want to see other people's visual stories. And so like that to me is really exciting, because that's going to change the visual story out there. And I think we're due for it, Yeah. That's very cool.
I have to say that I don't know Mr. James Jarvis, but he's making I agree with you. Baudrillard needs to be given more space.
I guess I just
I don't know how I don't pay attention much to the comics thing. I should probably be paying more attention.
No, not that. Yeah, I wouldn't pay attention to that at all. Honestly, it's not worth paying attention to. Oh no, we lost Rick again. Cory, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Hey.
He's back.
He is back.
Cory's making skulls eat cake or something.
That is true.
Are they eating hamburgers, Cory? What's that skull eating?
Yeah, it's eating a hamburger.
Okay. Yeah, it's really small on my screen, and
Yeah, let me see if I've got
Let's see where you're at. Should I turn my camera off? I think I'm dropping a lot. Plus, nobody wants to see this circle of beauty. Oh, there it is.
So that's that. That's what I did forever ago.
Rad.
That is pretty rad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of my first name recognition animations that I'm working on. I'm doing this for Wacom, which is kind of fun.
Oh. Ooh. Yeah. Big company. Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be kind of cool.
That is cool, dude.
I'd be curious, you guys, and Cory, you said you got a master's.
Yeah.
Or do you have a degree in art?
I have a master's
you hear me?
in
Crap,
illustration design.
Okay. So do you feel like, and I guess I'm asking my own questions here too, but I'm curious, do you feel like getting a master's degree was worth the time and effort, or do you feel like education is sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Incongruous to success in the field. Something.
A giant bubble that's about to burst, like a 2008 bubble.
Yeah, like is education just another, like, are we selling false hope? Or do you feel like there's like legitimate reasons to go to school and get trained as an illustrator instead of just learning it by going out into the field, you know?
Okay, so I have kind of a nuanced answer because I was more in business marketing in my 15 years before I started teaching.
Oh, you teach?
I do. I teach visual communication in the communication department. So it's animation, illustration, design, but it's for like journalists and PR majors and photographers.
Dude, I would have expected way more eye rolls from you if you'd know. I didn't know you were a teacher. You should just be going, ugh, what an idiot.
No, you've got to understand, like, I'm in a department full of like real academics, like PhDs and people doing like incredible research, and people that have like degrees from like the Columbia School of Journalism and stuff. And then I'm over here. I tell the story all the time, but when they interviewed me for the job, they were like, so what are you reading lately? And I'm sure that they were expecting whatever, because I was reading like Capullo's Batman, and and one of the dudes walks over, because I was just sitting there waiting for my next interview. One of the guys walks over and goes, "Oh, are you reading Mouse?" And I was like, this looks nothing like that. But it occurred to me that like that's probably the only academically acceptable comic book.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, this is Batman. That's the Joker that he's fighting right now,
Yeah.
But anyway, so like, yeah, so I'm kind of I'm the black sheep in the department. Like, I'm the only one with the liberal arts master's. And I'm the guy that sort of wears a tie, even though we're all contractually obligated to, but like I've got it a couple inches down so that I can breathe. Anyway, so like, but I come at it from a heavy business background. Like I was always like director of marketing, and also ran the kind of small in-house art team or whatever. And so I think undergraduate degrees that are not like really expensive private schools, like if you leave with like a dentist level debt and you're going to make, like communication major money, you're going to be in debt for a while. So I don't think that's worth it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think going to an Ivy League school is necessarily going to give you Ivy League money anymore. I think that's dead. But I mean, if you can get in, like I paid off my master's. I wanted to do it in 6 months. I did it 8 months after I graduated. So I'm like debt free. Right. But I did that because I was living in like a tiny crappy apartment, and I don't live in LA. I mean, like there's a lot of choices that I've made to be able to do that. And so it's a nuanced answer for me, because I started drawing when I was 32. That's when I started taking illustration seriously.
Oh, really?
So I'm like,
wow,
I'm 41 now. So I'm like super late in the game. I started animating 3 years ago. So anyway, so I feel like for me, my master's from SCAD, I packed like 10 years of advancement and learning and kind of leveling up into that kind of 18 months, which was way too fast. I mean, I about killed myself getting it so quickly. And so for me, I would say 100% it was worth it. I did it. I didn't get an MFA. I just got a master's. But yeah, I did it. I did it really fast. Like sleeping 4 hours a night, working full time. I scheduled 30 minutes a day to eat dinner with my family and then go back to work. Like it wasn't it wasn't a pleasant time, but I leveled up significantly. And so, I took too many credits, I found the envelope. That's what I did. I found the edge of the envelope. I know where my breaking point is because I totally broke. But, my breaking point, if you're wondering,
I can't believe you got a
months.
master's degree in 18 months.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I shouldn't have. It was unhealthy. It wasn't a healthy speed.
I don't know about that. I can't believe you even. Yeah, I mean, that's like 18 units a semester with no breaks ever.
Insane.
Right. That's I went. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, they if they offered a class during Christmas break, I took it. That type of thing. So, anyway, long story short, I think if you don't saddle yourself with massive amounts of debt, I think it can be beneficial. I think you can do the same thing if you can find the right mentors and the right crowd, but I think it takes longer. And I think it takes a certain personality type that is like intrinsically motivated to a degree that most people are not. And so
right.
Most people are self-centered enough to enjoy their blind spots about themselves. And one of the things about higher education that's really helpful is it challenges your preconceived notions, and it forces you into critical thinking and nonlinear thinking and design thinking and creative thinking and logical thinking. And you actually have to get into meta communication where you're communicating about communicating and you're thinking about thinking, and you start to build structures that I think if you're just I'm gonna study anatomy today, I think you're missing out on a lot of the mental enhancement that comes from higher education. But I think if you sacrifice the next 20 years of your life, being impoverished because you've indebted yourself to the point where you can't afford, to buy a car or food or whatever. I think a lot of people kill their artistic career
before it even gets started.
Having to get a job before they're ready.
Dude, Dave Hickey, who's I'm a fan of, said art school should be free and by the coast.
Yeah.
Dave Hickey was one of my favorite. That guy was like my respite in theory, whereas I'm like, oh, he's talking about beauty and kitsch. I love this dude.
Yeah, he would champion, Norman Rockwell and whatever. The people that usually get poo-pooed. I like Dave Hickey too.
I also just like his style.
So that's interesting. No, me too. Rare. That's an interesting point though, because ultimately, Josh, you went to the same school I did. None of us graduated with that much debt, really. Some probably, right? But it was $800 a semester when I went to Long Beach. So
it was a lot more when I went.
I know. It did.
Yeah.
It went up, but it's now. So my daughter's going to Long Beach next semester. She starts there, and she's going to go to the jewelry program. So she's going to be in the art department at Long Beach State, which is crazy. But awesome. It's so I looked at how much it costs, and I think it's about $7,000 a year, and I could be wrong. And she gets a little bit off because I work there, but whatever. But it's still, for the money, you're not hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt with an art degree, which is absolutely the worst thing you could possibly do as an artist, in my mind.
Yeah, I've actually mentioned that before, that I'm still in a little bit of debt, but for student debt. Other than that, all my debts are pretty good. But I will say what I owed for a BFA and an MFA equates to 1 year at Art Center.
Right. If that.
Yeah. So because I remember applying for Art Center, I think I got accepted, and then I looked at the price and I was like, I just can't, I can't. And also because I didn't really want to be an animator, I'm kind of glad I didn't go that route, because I'm proud of state schools. I think it's much more viable. And the cool thing is Cal State Long Beach is an official art school now, which is pretty badass, right? So that's cool too.
Yeah, it's called the School of Art now. It's a big school. I mean, I don't know if you know this, Josh, but the illustration animation has like 220 something students in it. It's big in the BFA program. That's not just
in it.
Yeah.
It used to be like so niche, like and tiny.
Yeah. It's very large. It's huge.
That's awesome.
But it's still. I mean, they still pare it down to like the cohort that goes through is like 24 at a time. So there's about 100 in illustration and 100 in animation, and then they do this kind of entertainment, this new entertainment track thing that I don't really have strong opinions about either way. It just is what it is. But it's a neat school, and I think it's uniquely situated between LA and Orange County, so that it's got, if you want to go work and surf and skate stuff like I did, it's perfect for it. If you want to go work in Hollywood, it's right there too, and you can kind of pick and choose where you want to go. Mm-hmm.
And Long Beach is a great city, like really great city.
I was born there, man. I love that city. I've always had a soft spot for Long Beach. It's just there's something about that place. It's cool.
Yeah, agreed. One of these days,
Tim is here. This. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, like one of these days after COVID, I'll have to come up and we'll do Alex's or something.
Yeah, or that actually would be really fun. I think we've only played Alex's once. Do you mean play it or just go hang out there?
I don't remember. Play it. I'm down to do that too.
If Alex is, I don't know if they're booking shows in it yet, but when shows start back up, I think we played there once, and it's a great place.
I love the Velvet Elvis paintings.
I know. I mean, Alex, their booking agent's just a stand-up dude. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, I guess, I'm running out of interesting things to say, but I would just say if anyone's even considering going to school for art, I agree with what Cory was saying, that it kind of serves as a shortcut to just the school of hard knocks and going out there and working. I've worked with plenty of people, that don't have degrees and don't have any formal training, and they're amazing. But I do feel like the deeper the well you have to draw from, Josh is talking about Baudrillard and stuff. If you have read those things or about Michel Foucault and you understand some of the things that he's talking about, and you've been exposed to that in school, your own and more complex and more interesting to people that share that body of knowledge with you. And I think that it's rewarding in ways that self-taught people may not be able to do. That's I don't want to sound elitist at all, but because I'm making generalizations again, like I did with anime. But I do think that education has value, but I don't think it has hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt value.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like the biggest thing that, like, I feel like if you're going to, I always felt this way too. And I remember the school I used to teach at was much more of a, when I came into it, it seemed like a lot of the teaching was sort of structured very much on like, you sort of follow step A, step B, step C. It's like a rendering course kind of thing. And I always felt like if everybody in the class like draws like a shoe, and they all draw a shoe perfectly, and they render it perfectly, and to the point where it's just total photorealism, and they hang it in a gallery, I'm going to walk through that gallery and be like, well, there was a shoe. I'm not going to remember any of the artists' names. I'm not going to care who any of the artists are, because like, so to me, I feel like if your goal is just to get the trade and learn rendering, learn perspective, like, buy David Chelsea's book. Like we've had him on here. He's a genius at perspective. You'll learn more from that book probably than you would in an art school. Like,
well, and I tell my students this all the time. I say university is probably the least efficient and most expensive way to get like a basic understanding of how to do foundational stuff that you can just get on YouTube.
Yep.
Like if that's what you're here for, like if you're taking my vector graphics class to learn Adobe Illustrator, all my tutorials are free on YouTube. Just go watch those and save yourself $1,000 and a lot of pain. Cause like,
Yeah.
I don't think
Lynda.com,
Yeah.
Lynda.com. It's like a few $100.
Yeah.
Right.
But I do think school gets you a little further. And one of the things like you mentioned, David Hadlock being an influence and a mentor, like for me, that was probably the most impactful teacher I had going there. And one of the things about the way he taught was he would not only teach you to compose and stuff like that, but he would ask questions that got you to think in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very one-on-one experience. And I don't think you can get that very easily, like outside of school. I mean, you can probably, but it's hard. It's a hard thing to get.
Right.
Yeah. So cool.
When you think about it, Josh, I mean, how much time can you spend? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Are you there?
Yes. What's up?
I was going to say, if you think about how much time you're able to dedicate to, let's say, a junior designer at the place you're working now in the day, you're also on the clock and you're busy. I remember going to like David's classes when I was an undergraduate, and Robin's classes and everybody else's. But for some reason, I took more classes from David. But I remember being in his classes, and he would talk to me about Charles Lloyd and jazz and whatever else was going on. In fact, I remember writing him an email when I was younger saying, "Hey, I got to miss class. I actually got tickets to go see Charles Lloyd tonight." And he was like, "Why would you come to class when you have tickets to see Charles Lloyd?" So he and one time he even yelled at me. There was Santa Ana winds. This was before I messed up my back, obviously. And it was Santa Ana winds and the waves were just really good. Sorry, this COVID also gave me an irregular heartbeat. So every once in a while, my heart just stops, which is disconcerting, and it just did it. But it started again. So woo. Anyway, so I'm all the way across. Yeah, I have to like go, and then it comes back. It's weird. So they got me on a beta blocker. So I'm taking a beta blocker now. So I'm hoping it'll fix it. So anyway, Dave, I'm on campus. Santa Ana winds, huge waves, and he's all the way across the art quad, and he's like, I'm walking to school dutifully, and he just yells, "Why are you at school? The waves are so good." Right. And I turned around and went home and surfed. So it's like, when you're around people like that and they kind of understand, it just makes you want to stay, and I think that he had his priorities in the right spot. I'm still friends with him, and unfortunately COVID thing has made it so that I haven't been able to see him, but I go over there a few times when I can, every once in a while, and try to
That's awesome.
Hang out. Yeah, it's fun. I feel like, he retired and then I got hired, and those are big shoes to fill and a big shadow to work in. And I'll never be able to do it. And so, I just don't try. I'm just me, and I'll never be him. And I don't even try because, he's his own dude, and Robin's an amazing teacher. And I think Mark is too. And the adjunct faculty we have there are amazing. And I really do appreciate how much work they do for so little. We have terrible budgets and still manage to do what we do. So
yeah, I will vouch for that. I'm a little biased because it's my alma mater, but
yeah,
I do recommend that school. I appreciate you kind of coming on and sharing some thoughts about teaching, and just kind of I really encourage you guys to check out Rick's work. I know we talked a lot about teaching, but his art's really rad, and it ranges from paintings that are like layering and doing really complicated design and collage and like pretty heavy theory in it, to like melting like skull faces, and it's pretty awesome. So
death metal t-shirts.
which is excellent. So I highly encourage you guys to check that out. I also want to say, like anybody who follows the show probably can instantly tell why Rick and I are friends, because you name dropped Minor Threat, and I probably mention Ian McKay like every other stream, because it's like my favorite. And his quote about like skateboarding training people how to perceive reality better is something I always quote. So I love it.
Dude, I didn't realize Robert was here. Hi, Robert. Let's just direct people to check out Robert's paintings, because he's a better painter than any of us.
Actually, Robert Robert is an amazing painter. He's a badass. He's doing these amazing, just abstract but representational, like fluid, gestural, like beautiful, like crayon drawings, and they're amazing. Like I'm doing a disservice even trying to describe them. They're brilliant. And that guy, when we were in graduate school, was one of the guys you'd look at, and it like that guy has a control over a brush or any medium that it will make anyone envious. Like I still remember watching him like lay just like a perfect line with a liner brush and just being like, what the hell? Like, anyway, yeah. So yeah, check out Robert's stuff too. All right. Did we lose you, Rick? Oh, okay.
I remember meeting Robert because Robert used to do the posters for yeah. I can't tell if I'm back.
You're back.
You're back.
Am I here, Josh? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do remember meeting Robert in graduate school and then finding out that he was the guy that was doing those posters over at Fingerprints and being like, oh man, I've been looking at Robert's work for a long time because I always thought those are so cool.
Yeah. We were all a little starstruck when he came to grad school because we're like,
that's the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. Anyway, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. All right. So with that being said, check out Rick's work at let's see, Rick Reese art.com. I was trying to remember if it was art or just Rick Reese, but you can also I'm always blanking out. You have a unique Instagram username, and I comment on it.
Yeah.
Double stagger. Double stagger.
That was a joke. I had to take it down because I had a student that was kind of harassing me and stalking me for a few years. So I took down all my social media stuff because it was just kind of tiresome and I didn't really care. And then I came back. I decided I would have it again and do social media stuff again. And I don't know why, but I really like that band Double Dagger. I don't know if you've ever heard them. I love them. And I thought, oh, this will be funny. And I didn't think that I would have to keep it for some reason. And now I've had it for years. And I'm like, oh, it's the stupidest name. Double Stagger. It makes no sense. But there it is.
It's kind of nice, though. I like it. It sounds like it has a deep meaning.
It sounds like I feel like it sounds like I'm a drunk or something. Like I'm I don't just stagger. I double stagger.
It reminds me of those sort of portraits you do where you'll kind of offset faces and sort of create that illusion of like blurriness. So Cory, where can everybody find your work?
You can find my stuff at corykerr.com, right there. So corykerr.com. And if you go to corykerr.com/animations, you can see some of the animations I've done recently. /videos, you'll get all the tutorials that so you can save yourself some tuition. And /
I love that. Cory, I love that. That's your mission.
I probably shouldn't promote that too much, but literally the technical aspects of what I teach in class, I just give away for free. So
I love
it's the thinking that it's all that they're paying for. Anyway, I hope. Yeah, if you go to corykerr.com/online, then that'll give you like Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and all those places that I am. So
you don't think that your students are paying to just bask in your aura? Because that's what I thought we did. I thought we were just there to just illuminate.
That's how cool I am. They really think I'm really rad. At one point in time recently, somebody called me old, and I was like, okay, so I'm twice your age, but I'm not like old. Like, come on, man.
Well, dude, when you ask Cory, next time you have like a freshman class, I don't know if you ever do this, but I can't remember somehow I asked the class what year they were born in, and it was like in the 2000s, and it scared me.
Oh yeah,
they were 18 and 19 years old, and they'd been born in like 2000.
Yeah, or like they tell you when they graduated high school, and you're like,
or whatever.
You graduated high school 20 years after I graduated college. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I'll catch myself
crazy.
thinking I'm all hip and current and being like you got to check out, like, you want to see good like graffiti lettering. Here's some Mike Giant, and they're like, that guy's like really old, dude. Like, and I'm like,
he's in his 50s.
what? I know, but he's like the best letterer. But yeah, I've been called old for my references multiple times. You just got to lean in and be like, okay, guys, get out your typing paper.
I just had this happen to me, and I know that we're trying to get out of here, and you guys, it's bedtime. But I just had a student say a word that I didn't ever understand. It was weeb, W-E-E-B. Have you ever heard that word?
Yeah.
No.
I didn't. I have no idea what a weeb is. I thought they were saying weed, and I thought they were making fun of me, like, Rick's a stoner, and they were saying you're a weed or something. And I was like, I don't get what you guys are saying. And I had a few students that were just almost in hysterics because so I was like, well, I'm just going to start calling people a weeb, whatever the hell that is. And they just thought it was so funny. And I totally felt like a grandpa. I was like, get off my lawn, just had no idea what they were talking about. I still don't. I still don't know what a weeb is. What's a weeb?
A weeb is somebody who's obsessed with Japanese culture but isn't Japanese, and they wish they were Japanese.
Got it.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't know what a weeb was, but I'm going to start referring to myself as a weeb now, just because.
I love it.
I think there's like anime nerd, otaku, and then weeb. I think there's like varying levels of obsession.
Right. So I was trying to find out what they were talking about. So I was like, if I Google weeb, will I get inappropriate pictures? Like, is it okay to Google that? And they were like, just dying. No, right. You should be fine Googling weeb, but don't Google whatever other Japanese words. And I was just like, oh my God, terrible.
Yeah. I always ask, if I Google that at work, will I be fired?
Yeah, that's exactly.
Is IT going to be knocking on my door?
Is it appropriate for me to screen share this search or not?
Right. No matter what it is, I turn the projector off every time I open up a new tab and search for something for an example, and then I turn it back on.
This is the plight of being an artist, especially when you're working in-house in a corporate environment where there's IT that's screened, because inevitably you're going to be searching for stuff that has weird results because the internet is creepy.
I know, dude.
Well, and sometimes you just need really bizarre reference, and that's like people who don't illustrate don't understand. Like, wait, why are you looking up like obese middle-aged men's necks? And it's like, well, I needed to see what the fold looked like on the back.
I do that, dude. Cory, I swear to you, one time. I'm sorry, you guys are being loud, huh? I swear to you, one time I was working at the company that shall not be named, making toys, and this is a while ago. So the internet is still new. There was no you couldn't decide if you wanted a strict search. That didn't exist yet. Right, so right. No joke. I did something that I thought was so inane, like just the most innocuous search. Firefighter, right? Like I needed some.
I've had to do that search, and it hasn't changed much in the last few years. I literally had this happen on a live stream where I had to draw a sailor, and I looked up Sailor Man, and then I was like, oh, I forgot that has all sorts of stuff with it.
Dude, so I didn't even think about it. I was just like, firefighter at the company that shall not be named, walls of like dudes, right? And I was just like, I was so mortified. And somehow curious, but I was so mortified. I was like, what do I do with this? It's like the moment where you're trying to take it down and it takes longer because you're all flustered. And I just needed to know what a fireman looked like. I just needed reference, I swear.
I wanted to look at the uniform. I just needed to see the badge.
And then, anyway, we digress. But
right.
Sorry.
I think we could probably do an entire stream of like innocent things we've searched that have turned out for
so true.
Hours. I think hours of stuff like that.
Oh man, I appreciate the invite, you guys. This was really fun for me. Thank you for having me on. It was great.
Awesome. We appreciate it too. All right, so I think the last thing that I just didn't mention is if you guys enjoyed this show, we usually have a guest every single week. It's an alternating guest, and sometimes it's on Scott Circlin's channel. Sometimes it's on my channel. The way you can keep track of that is by signing up for the mailing list. And as Scott always says, which Cory was joking that when he says this, it sounds like you are going to get spam, but we don't spam you. We just give you a notification before we're about to go live. That way you can catch the stream, because sometimes it'll be at different times or on different channels. But in general, it's every Thursday at 9 p.m.
Hey, Josh,
Yep.
Can I just say one real quick thing, because I'm not sure who's here, and I'm realizing that there's quite a few people that I know. And most of these people are my students. I just wanted to tell them really quick that I love you guys, and thank you for coming on here and making this fun. I miss you all that have graduated.
This is true. Well, we all miss you, Rick. All right, so so that'll pretty much do it. I appreciate it, and sorry about all the lagging too. That happens on stream. So
That's my fault.
No,
all right.
Not your fault. All right. Have a good one, guys.
All right, thank you.